Awesome. Hey, everybody. It's Clint Bruce here with the Pursuing Elite Podcast. Episode 1 is the first one we've done, and I'm super excited to have our guest, Lisa Atherton, who's been a friend for several years, on as really the first guest. So why are we doing a Pursuing Elite Podcast? Well, one of the reasons doing a Pursuing Elite Podcast is in the process of having gone and speaking to companies and meeting leaders, like, one of the things I love about what we get to do is we're kind of endeavor agnostic. So we just end up dealing with leaders as they're working through problems and leading well. And in the process of going and speaking to different companies, I always get to meet leaders. And there's always leaders where I go, man, I want to learn more about that leader. And Lisa's always been that way when you were over at Bell, now with what you're doing now. And so that's what the Pursuing Elite Podcast is. We're going to visit with the not done kind. We're going to talk about the pursuit points: balance, curiosity, tribalism, intentionalism, and authenticity. And we're going to hear more about leaders that are worth chasing. And so with that, I'll start wading in it. So Lisa Atherton.
Thank you,
Lisa.
Clint.
Lisa
Thank
Cherry.
you.
Was
Lisa
your
Cherry is my
name?
yes, that's my maiden name.
From Zephyr Hills.
Zephyr Hills. Yeah.
So real quick, I'll tell you about her because she won't talk about herself. So Air Force Academy grad. Won't hold that against anybody. Distinguished career in the Air Force, and then just kind of discovered this gift for understanding technology and requirements and even shaping requirements. So after you left the Air Force, then you kind of migrated into Textron, and it's just led at every level in Textron, culminating in now leading Textron Systems as the president and CEO, which was just acknowledged today as one of the top 50 companies that are led by women, which is fantastic.
Yeah, it's excellent.
And then
very excited.
Graduate of the Presidential Leadership Series, PLS, over there at the Bush Institute. And then, I got to know Boulder Crest really through you,
Yes.
Ken,
Yes.
and the Boulder Crest. And Boulder Crest has done some amazing things. And, a bride and a mother and all these other things. So excited to have you here. Did I leave anything out?
No, like you hit it all. I mean, it's, as you said, I went to one of the top, in fact, probably the top service academy
from
in the
an
United
elevation
States.
perspective, from an
Yes,
altitude
from
perspective.
an
Yes,
elevation
you are higher than the rest of us. I'll give you that one. Yeah. I tell you what, man, we were talking about this earlier today on Enduranceology, one of our other shows, and I was like, man, this elevation, whatever, right? I played my first football game out of Air Force Academy. I'm like, that oxygen I was making fun of, please bring it. Like, bring it back over here.
Look, I showed up from Florida. I was born. I came from sea level to
like
my
literal
first
sea
day
level.
across the line. It was no fun.
I was just like, okay, we're higher. We're higher now. So we'll start out these things with just what I call the Fast Five, which are Fast Five questions, which are just really require very little thought, kind of get the creative juices flowing, and they're also pretty fun. They're kind of insightful. So the first Fast Five questions of the Pursuing Elite Podcast are: what's the best concert you've ever been to?
Cher.
I bet she was amazing. I bet Cher can bring it.
Pre or post Sunny?
Oh, post Sunny, yeah. In fact, it was one of her first farewell tours. So
that's what I love. It was like my third farewell tour. It's
Yeah.
like when my sister talks about her seventh sophomore year at the University of Arkansas. I'm joking, Courtney. I love you. And so Cher, best concert. What made it great?
Well, the people watching was pretty epic.
Yeah, that's great. Where was it?
It was in Richmond, Virginia.
Go Spiders.
Yeah. So it was good. It was, and she did a tribute to Sonny. Sonny had just passed not too long before that. And,
she's an incredible performer.
Look, if I can be that age and wear those outfits and get up on stage, bring it. Bring it.
Home. Been trying to do that forever.
Yeah.
All right. So best sports event you ever attended? From iconic, or I was there when it happened, or like just the one you go back to?
The Masters.
Oh, that is pretty cool.
Yeah. In fact, it was the year Tiger won.
Oh, wow.
The most recent, I guess. I guess when you say the year, the most recent. But yeah, my husband and I got to go and sit there. We spent a lot of our time sitting on 16 and watching them come up. And
wow.
There's just
what made it so cool?
You can see it on TV, but there's just nothing like seeing the azaleas and just it's just an amazing event. I mean, it's.
Do you play golf? Is golf a?
My husband does. I had to, if I wanted to spend time with him, I had to learn.
Oh.
So so I don't play it a lot. It's a long game, right?
I can't do
it's it. I mean,
and these guys stop asking.
Pretty good.
These guys stop asking me to
18
go.
holes.
Yeah. They're like, okay, cool. There's tournaments we go to I didn't even know about. The last one you came to, you were wearing flip flops. and the host asked if you got your putter from TGI Fridays because it was wooden.
Yeah.
I was like, no, I got it from Bennigan's, right? So
Well, I mean, you would think the Masters wouldn't be one of my favorite, but it's the place was amazing. The people were amazing. Condoleezza Rice greeted us when we kind of
she's so
walked
cool.
in.
Oh, wow.
So
She is so
yeah,
cool.
so it was pretty epic.
So Trey's
Yes,
story. I
yes.
asked Trey one time, I was like, I said, hey, is Condoleezza as good on football? He goes, dude, we had to watch Monday Night Football because we knew the next morning she's going to talk about it, and we don't want to be dumb. I'm like, well, you're not going to be dumb about that. You're going to be dumb about something else. So that's a great answer. So the instrument you'd like to be able to play, like if there was an instrument like you just like, if you could wake up and be a master at a particular instrument.
Guitar.
Guitar?
Yeah,
That's a good
guitar.
one. What about you, Ross?
It would be piano.
I play the piano.
Okay. Well, I was gonna say, please say piano. I thought I had you pegged. Now I'm way off. She said
yeah.
masters.
Yeah, Lisa's going to blow you
chair,
away, man.
guitar.
She's
I'm
gonna
like,
blow you away.
okay.
Stand by.
Well, he's killing me because I mean, there's so many. I've been to Doobie Brothers concert. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm
That's a
kind
tough
of
one
an
to choose from.
eclectic.
I'm with
you
you,
know,
yeah.
I'm a Michael Jackson fan,
Okay.
but I'm
That's
also
incredible.
I'm pretty
Yeah,
all over the map.
My
so.
playlist sounds like, you remember when we were growing up, there's that show Sybil.
Yeah,
with
yeah.
Sally
Yeah,
Field
yeah,
and
yeah,
Jetty's
yeah,
like,
yeah.
So my playlist looks like Sybil programmed, with like 17
Yeah.
different personalities.
So
right?
what'd you think I was, Ross? I mean, what'd you think my concert was going to be?
I didn't see Cher coming. I didn't see.
I
Cher
didn't
coming
either.
at
He said
all.
it was Fast Five.
Yeah,
so I just,
yeah.
It just came
Wait,
out of
wait, so
nowhere.
That's what's so fun about the Fast Five. You almost that's the real answer.
Okay,
You almost
wait.
don't
Now I'm
think about it.
confused. Is Cher not your final answer?
Well,
No, Cher is the
it
final
did.
answer.
And then
It
you come up
popped
with Doobie Brothers. I was thinking something. I don't know. Right when you said Cher, that I immediately thought of Sonny, and I just wanted to know like how far removed were you from?
So my husband. Oh, you were trying to figure out how old I am. That's
No,
what
no,
you're
no,
trying to do.
no. How far
Backpedal.
removed Cher
Backpedal.
was? Yeah.
Break contact. Break contact.
Well, so my husband's going to be upset when he hears this
Contact
podcast
right.
because my most recent concert. Well, I guess I went to see Keith Urban at the Cattle Barons, but my most recent
He's too pretty.
concert. He is pretty. My most recent was, wait for it, New Kids on the Block.
No way.
Oh,
you were
I'm
there?
down.
You
I'm
bet.
down. I'm down with that.
You bet.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm down
when
with
I
that.
hear New Kids on the Block, I think of boom boxes and blue jean jackets.
It
Dude, we
was
were peaking.
epic.
We were peaking. Like we grew up in Z Cavarici days and,
Yeah.
and NKOTB, and then yeah.
Donnie Wahlberg's. Yeah.
Dude, the Wahlbergs are a talented family.
They are a very talented.
They're a
family.
talented family.
Very talented.
A funky bunch.
Yeah, there you go.
Marky
That's
Mark,
awesome.
baby.
All right, so
Okay, wait, this might be part
so,
of the
so best concert was Cher, best sports event, the most recent Masters, the best the instrument is you said
Guitar. Yeah.
So this is one of my favorite questions. What toy did we have when we were growing up that we most wish our kids had?
That we most wish our kids have now?
No, that we wish they could have had. Like you don't know toys. Like this was a toy.
Oh.
Like that we grew up with.
You're talking like Operation toy, like
Yeah, just whatever I played with as a kid that I wish my kids could play with. Like it was still around, or
Okay.
it was still cool, whatever.
sure.
Yeah, man, that's a hard one because it was my imagination. I mean, it was like,
Yeah.
we went out and built forts and,
Yeah.
Well, like a big wheel or like a bike or something like that.
yeah, a bike. I mean, we didn't have a lot with the. I mean, we did fine, but my parents would send us out into the woods.
Yeah.
And our neighbors had 6 kids.
Oh yeah.
And we went out
Like
and
a little Lord of the Flies action.
we did,
There. It was like,
and we built forts with palm fronds. And I mean, like one time they caught us taking toilet paper out there because we had built like a bathroom and a kitchen, and we had like a whole.
Y'all were sophisticated.
So we were.
Yeah.
So I mean, I really wish our kids were outside more.
Yeah,
and
right.
It's like that feeling you get now when you drive through a neighborhood and you see kids out playing. I'm like,
yeah.
you kids know what.
keep it alive.
Remember the iconic like all the bikes dropped at someone's
Oh,
front
yeah.
door. You don't see that.
Do you
these
remember?
days.
You remember the green machine?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So the green machine was like a stick controlled, and so here's what I'll tell you is if you're a heavier kid like I was, you need to be well ahead of when you turn before you try to do a power slide.
Sure.
Because you will slide right under a school bus.
It's physics.
And if that school bus driver doesn't see you, then you will be stuck on our school bus while it drives away, which is
may or may not have happened.
may or may not have happened in Little Rock Public School System. So, and then, okay, so that's a great one. And then what's a bucket list experience that you're looking forward to?
That I'm looking forward to.
A bucket list, not the bucket list, a bucket list.
So at passed on it only because I had something else that came up, so I hope it comes back around again, but I want to jump out of an airplane with the Black Knights.
Oh, you should be able to do that.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
that was...
I'll make some calls.
Yeah.
They got a Twitter feed, right? I was like, hey, Black Knights. Lisa wants to do this.
We had an opportunity last
you
summer.
Don't jump as much as you fall.
No,
It's
you
more of a
fall. You're kind of strapped on, and they kind of make sure that
Have you watched? So Bill wants to do that.
Yeah.
His daughter wants to do it. He's terrified.
Yeah, I am too. It makes me sweat actually right now thinking about it.
Have you seen the James Corden, Tom Cruise?
Yes.
It's the funniest. It's worth watching. It's a worth watching one. So that's awesome. Fast Five. I mean, that's a problem with really having great guests. Is it's never as fast as it's supposed to be in my head. But that's usually my fault. So.
No, bro. We're at 10 minutes, man.
Sorry about that.
That's not fast.
So, Lisa, tell us a little about life before. I mean, you kind of did it right then, talking about living in, playing in the woods with your neighbors and all that. Talk about life before Air Force Academy.
Yeah, like my parents were school teachers, and actually my mom was a stay-at-home mom, and she went back and got her degree while I was in middle school. It took her 16 years to get her associates.
Oh, wow.
And she would take a class, and then she'd earn some more money, go back and take a class.
Yeah.
And so she was very deliberate. And I remember when she told me, I was in 7th grade, they stopped working. She was working at a shoe store, and she was going to go get her four-year degree. And I said, what are you going to get it in? And she said, I'm going to be a math teacher. And I was like, math? Girls don't teach math. Why don't you do like English or history? And she got so mad. She was like, girls can do whatever they want.
That's awesome.
And that stuck with me, and I was like, well, huh.
So that was really maybe one of the first times where the stereotype was defied by a person of influence. I mean, it doesn't get much more influential than your mom.
Right. And it was kind of surprising for me to think of my mom as a math teacher.
Yeah.
I guess I'd never really thought about women in that field. And so
not from a bias perspective, just from an observation perspective.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Right. I mean, nobody told me you couldn't.
Right.
It was just from what
it just wasn't there. You didn't see it.
Right. My dad was the math teacher.
Right.
My dad went on to be the principal or assistant principal at my high school. And so, I mean, in my world, the men did the math and the women were the history. And
my nightmare is my parents being involved in the school that I'm at. There's no way to get out of it. And so Ross's father was principal at Katy High School for how long?
Since sometime in the 80s till 2006.
Yeah.
Like we had our family photos taken at prom together, so it was, I'm not even kidding.
God.
It was
I'd have been in so much trouble.
Yeah, it was. I didn't get a lot of dates, but it was like it was.
You were spared for that.
Yeah,
boys are stupid. So, question about Zephyr Hills. Now, were you involved in the Great Polystyrene Revolt of 1990?
The Great what?
Polystyrene lunch trays when you're.
Oh yeah, we were actually. Ben, you did your research. We were trying to make so I do know the guys that ran the revolt, the protest, as it were. But yeah,
you want to church it up and call it sounds like a revolt, as I read about it.
Well, we were just trying to fight for the environment, man. We were trying to.
Well, of course. I mean, you're out there building clubhouses with palm fronds and stuff.
Exactly.
You gotta be green. You gotta be green. Don't mess with my,
That's funny.
Wow.
You did some deep research on Zephyr Hills.
Did you play sports?
I did. Yeah, I was a sport letterman. Did track, volleyball, softball, and I was a 4-year varsity player for the basketball team.
Wow.
So
you have brothers and sisters?
I have a younger brother.
Did he get the athletic gene too?
He did. He probably was a better athlete, and he was a lot smarter than me. But I used to beat him up, make sure nobody knew.
You have an obligation, and that's your responsibility.
So, no, he was. I got 3 years younger brother, so he took care of him, and
that's awesome.
My baby brother. So
where is he now?
He's in Kentucky. So he's a plant manager in the automotive industry.
Awesome.
Overall there, yeah. So.
When did Air Force Academy kind of come on the horizon? When did that become of interest to you, or service come of interest to you?
So when I was in 9th grade, a guy who was around the corner from me in school, he lived around the corner. He got accepted into the Air Force Academy. Mm-hmm. So I was like, what's that about? Mm-hmm. And so started looking into that and was just kind of curious. Number one, to be very honest, when I realized it was a quote free education, I was the kid of school teacher parents. I was like, well, hey, let me go investigate that
Absolutely.
and see what that's about.
Absolutely.
And then when I started understanding that a little bit more of kind of the, to use your word, elite, kind of the quality of the education out there, I was like, I want to understand more. So his name was Tim McGavern. When he went to the prep school before he went into the academy, and so when he graduated the P school, I went out to see his graduation.
Oh, cool.
And there is when I got to see the
chapel
academy.
and
Yes.
all that.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's when I was like, okay, this is it.
Yeah, it bites you.
It's the one.
The bug bites you pretty
And
quick.
my guidance counselor was like, Lisa, you really should apply to West Point. You should apply to Annapolis. And I was like, no, it's a Air Force Academy or nothing for me.
Yeah.
And so
I did the same thing. I was
Yeah.
just like, I'm going to go there. Magnum PI went to Naval Academy. I'm going to the Naval Academy, right?
I was convinced I was going to go and be an astro engineer, and I had it all planned out.
Yeah.
Didn't do that. No, I was legal studies major.
Yeah, I didn't know. I remember I checked in Naval Academy. They're like, what do you want to major in? I'm like, well, only 3 of them don't end in engineering. So it's one of these 3. And I picked economics, which is like the most math-centric. I'm like, I'm so dumb.
As you know, you get enough core engineering without being an engineering major. You come out of there with...
Well, Air Force is a technical school.
Absolutely.
It's an absolutely technical school.
Absolutely.
And you were at Air Force while I was at Navy.
Absolutely.
So we know so many of the same people, Bo Morgan.
Yeah, in fact, I think we beat you.
We're 2-2. We're 2-2.
Are you sure?
Yeah, no, because that's the only reason Bo and I still talk.
Okay.
Yeah, he's sure.
Okay.
Now, technically, I think I have an edge because we beat y'all at homecoming at your place.
You did.
Yeah, which was fantastic.
Yeah, I do remember that.
Yeah, it was great. It was great. And so Air Force Academy, what was the most interesting thing to you, having come from Florida and come from an environment where you kind of grew up? No, is it a small town that you
Small
grew up
town,
in?
very small, 11,000 people. Most all of them were kind of second, third generation families
wow.
there. And the folks that did come in were northern families. You know, Florida being kind
Sure,
of migration
yeah.
for the winter. And so older folks that would come in and migrate and come back and leave. But as far as people who lived there, very small town. I think where your question was going, look, the academy was eye-opening to me. Perspectives, people with different, people who went to like amazing high schools.
Right.
I came in, graduated number 5 from my high school and thought I was,
Yeah.
you know what,
Yeah, the heat.
and I didn't know jack.
Yeah.
I was studying like crazy. At Prague, my first semester, progress reports.
Right.
Prague, you get your grades, and I tested really high, so I ended up in like Calc 3.
Oh, bad
They put
mistake.
me in Chinese.
Yeah.
There was all kinds of like high level courses my first semester at the academy. At Prague, I had a 1.63 GPA. So I called my parents, and I'm like, I
Lisa's
can't.
coming home.
That's why I was like, I ain't cutting it. There's no way. So I'm upset, and I'm trying to, I can't do this. So they send me a care package, and it's a big box, and care packages normally are like cookies and letters from home and stuffed animals and things to make you encouraged. And my parents sent me math books, and so
Solid move.
they
Paid out in spades, right?
apparently I was supposed to
It
sleep
worked.
on those, and
It worked. You made it.
yeah, I pulled it out and pulled it up, but it was unbelievable. The eye-opening, just people with different backgrounds
Right.
and people who didn't look like me and
Yeah.
people who didn't think like me, and I loved it.
And I think we were hitting our service academies at a time where diversity was really becoming important. So what we had is, the first female Naval Academy graduates in late 70s, early 80s, and then to see them, so you had this kind of generational impact, and then in the 90s, we got to kind of drink deeply from the well of what diversity efforts had proven on the combat landscape, right? And so I think we were at a really timely place. Post Desert Storm too, there was a little bit of a reduction in force, and then there was kind of a reorganization of it. So it was an interesting time to be there to see as like a lot of things are changing. That was what was so impressive to me is, just the level of intellect, the level of resolve, the diversity that I got to be around. That I was blown away by it.
I was too. I sang in the gospel choir. I was the Forrest Gump of the Air Force Academy
That's
gospel
awesome.
choir. It was it was so. You talk about like women at the academies, I mean, so we were about there 92 through 96. So you've got like majors turning lieutenant colonels in the actives at that time. And they're getting, right about that time, getting opened up to fly fighters.
Oh, yeah.
So at the Air Force Academy, that's a big deal.
Yeah, that's why you go, like
Right.
most people.
So all of a sudden, you had a group of women who had just joined the Air Force Academy, who their whole world just opened up of, hey, I didn't join the Air Force Academy and can only fly a desk or
Right.
can only fly a cargo. I
Right.
can actually also fly fighter pilot.
Right.
You know, I could be a fighter pilot. And Nicole Malakowski, I mean, Fifi, first Thunderbird pilot out of my class.
Wow.
And I mean, it was a really cool time to be there.
Yeah, that's what's neat for me as a dad girl. I mean, as a girl dad. I was supposed to say girl dad. I think it's what my daughter told me. Girl dad. Oh,
Yeah.
all right. I get to point to my classmates, and
Yeah.
they were the first ofs or the best ofs. You know, Nikki Mann's an astronaut. She was
Yeah.
a soccer player
Yeah.
at Annapolis
Yeah.
and Marine Corps pilot, and Jeanette Haney was a Cobra pilot, and then you know, Leah Paz. She's amazing. She fighter pilot, and then she went agency, and then she went that, and she helped me get through calculus. And she tells people, like, getting you through calculus was the hardest thing I've ever done. I'm like, that's not a cool story. Like, you've landed on an aircraft carrier at night in a storm. She's like, nope, not as hard as getting you through calculus. I'm like, God, it's hurtful. So graduated from the Air Force Academy, and then went into
Acquisition. So I was a contract. My goal, you know, while I was there, I had a bit of a shift of focus where I had a bit of a passion around, I'll say just human rights might be the word, but I wanted to go into legal studies, right?
Yeah.
I wanted to go be a lawyer. I was
Right.
going to go. In fact, I met Janet Reno. She came to speak at the academy in the fall of '96.
she was Attorney General at the
She was
time,
Attorney
wasn't she?
General at the
That's right.
time. We were celebrating 20 years of women at the service academies. And so Janet came to speak. Janet, like I knew her by first name, but she came to speak. And so I, you know, went up to her and introduced myself. And I said, I want your job someday. And she looked at me and she said, I hope you get it.
That's cool.
And that was so powerful. It was,
Oh, yeah.
It's almost like my mom saying to me,
Yeah.
you know, why not? And I was like, man, if Janet Reno thinks that I can be the Attorney General of the United States, I can do anything. And so it as I look back now in my more mature age, and think about sometimes the words you speak to people,
Oh, yeah.
just in that blink of an eye.
Yeah.
Janet Reno never knew me, will never remember me, but she made an impression on me right
Yeah.
then. And it maybe didn't change the course of my life, but it certainly made an imprint to give me some courage
That's
to go
huge.
do things.
That's one of the reasons I want to do this podcast is you know, you never know what element of this someone's going to extract out and go like, oh man, Lisa Atherton, you know, she had doubts. I mean,
Absolutely.
she you know, I thought I had a 4.0 until they told me I had to divide it by semesters. I was like, oh, divided by semesters? Like, wow, that's what I thought cumulative meant. They're like, no, you're wrong on several fronts here, right? But I and that's one of the things I think is neat is to have some, you know, young girl or guy going who's a freshman at the Air Force Academy going, I'm not going to make it, and then he's going to call home or she's going to call home and was like, Mom, send me math books, right? Like,
Yeah.
keep the cookies, send me the math books,
Look,
right?
if you could be a 163 at Prague and still be a CEO of a company, hang in there.
That's it. That's it. I was telling my daughter, I was like, listen, A students work for C students, and D students usually start the company.
That's right.
And my wife smacks me in the back of the head. I'm like, what? That's kind of right, maybe. I don't know. Whatever. You know what I'm saying? And I just
You got to work hard.
I just went out and chopped wood after that. So graduated from Air Force Academy,
Yeah.
and then was interested in going law, but you didn't.
I fell in love. So,
Oh.
yeah, I met my husband and decided, and he came as a package deal.
At Annapolis?
No,
I mean,
no,
at
no.
Air Force
Yeah,
afterwards,
so
right?
that was a Freudian slip for you.
Yeah, sorry.
No, we met. I was stationed at Langley. We met at Langley. He was their single dad of 3.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I was still in uniform at the time. So was he, and so we made a choice. He was closer towards retirement
Sure.
than I was. He was enlisted,
Yeah.
and so we had to make a decision, which
Yeah,
maybe wasn't quite as easy as what.
Fraternization.
Yeah.
Oh,
So we kind of had to
Tomato.
think through all that, right? So, so we made that decision, and you look back, and I'm like, man, what would I tell my, early 20s self? You're going to walk away from an officership to go be a stepmom of a 7, 10, and 11-year-old.
That's what I was going to ask you how old the kids were.
Yeah, 7, 10, 11. He was a single dad.
That's not an easy age to step in on.
No. No, it's not. But I'll tell you what.
What's the breakout?
It was boy 11, boy 10, girl 7.
Got it.
And but I am now the proud Gigi of 5 grandkids, and the proud mom of a surprise 14-year-old. So
that's awesome.
And Jim and I have celebrated 21 and a half years of wedded bliss.
Yeah, I love that.
So, but yeah, I mean, it was a crazy leap of faith, and which Jim and I have a lot of that. That has guided a lot of that.
Yeah, faith. I mean, that's something that you and I share, and I'm excited to ask a couple questions about that as we kind of go deeper into this. So left service and immediately went into kind of the business world.
Industry, yeah. So I really literally walked right across the street at Langley, and went to work for Air Combat Command as a support contractor. So at the time in the late 90s, early 2000s, they had A-76 kind of these roles for the POM. So I went in working for a company called Cytor and basically ran the POM budget for the government. So you were able to sign, at the time we were able to sign NDAs, and I could do work kind of guiding the program element managers and help them put together their rack and stack of the plans. It was amazing opportunity because I got to sit in one spot for about 7.5 years and learn everything there was to learn about the combat air forces.
Wow.
I mean, so I could talk about what a harm targeting pod did on an F-16 to be able, I mean, it was just really, it was interesting to be able to sit and see how all of it comes together that I wouldn't have gotten the opportunity had I been moving around, deploying, or been in different jobs. It just was a unique, it's not the way it's normally orchestrated from a military career. But
so for our great citizen listeners, you threw out a couple of acronyms.
Sorry.
No, that's fine. But I love learning. So POM.
Yeah, it's the Program Objective Memorandum, which is essentially the government's checkbook for how they plan their programs. So the POM is their program list when we decide how we're going to spend our money for the government. Got
it. Okay, good. Okay, so then when did you start migrating over to Textron?
So that happened in 2007. So I had been working there at Langley doing this role for the POM, and honestly, I kind of got a little bored. Yeah. I had moved to Langley originally when I was in the government, when I was in uniform, because I wanted to go to law school at the College of William & Mary.
So the law dream was still alive.
Still alive. In fact, it still is. I still may go back and get a law degree someday. Back to the curiosity thing. But so I had moved to Langley. And then ended up meeting Jim, fell in love, and had the kids, and then decided, hey, if I'm not going to go to law school, I don't have the time, space, or money to go do that. I'm going to go get my MBA at night. And I was working for a great company.
Didn't you Duke?
No, I did at William & Mary.
Okay, got it. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
So William & Mary had a great executive program, and my company was able to do reimbursement. And so for 2.5 years, I would go to school at night. I'd get up at 4 in the morning and do my papers and get the work done. Then I'd go to work during the day and run the kids to lacrosse practice and,
This is pretty
golf.
Full tilt.
It was pretty full tilt at that time.
But it was purposeful. I mean, you knew why you were doing everything you were doing.
Yeah. And then we said, hey, let's take this MBA out for a test run. Jim had retired at that point. Right. So he retired from the Air Force in 2004, I think, 2005. And we bought some Cold Stone Creameries. So we bought 3 Cold Stone Creamery franchises there in the Williamsburg, Virginia area. And so we started running those. I was still working on the base. Jeez. And I had kids that were in high school. Yeah. And then one day I didn't feel too well. And Jim said, don't take a pregnancy test. You always get disappointed because we've been trying for 7 years.
Oh, wow.
And then I said, no, I need to, because usually it ends up having to have some surgery. Right. And this time, it was positive. And I walked out and I showed him, and he started laughing. He's like, my God, don't you know I'm 44 years old? So,
this is in the Bible.
That's right.
Abraham was way older. You're fine.
You're fine. You're good. So we decided that we needed to put the stores up for sale, and we had our amazing son Hayden 9 months later. And right in the middle of that, Textron called and said, hey, we'd like you to come up and interview for a job for business development. And so we said, hey, how about we just throw some more stress in life?
Yeah,
and
why
let's
not?
have a baby and sell businesses and start a new job and move to New England. We have never lived there before.
Because Textron's based in Boston.
So the corporate headquarters are based in Rhode Island, and
Okay,
this
Rhode
particular
Island. Got it.
role was in Boston. Yes. So went up there, and that's how that gig started.
And Rhode Island and Boston, that's like cold, like you owe it money. It was like angry cold.
It's an angry cold and a wet,
Yeah,
angry
the Naval
cold.
Academy Prep School is in Newport, Rhode Island.
Yeah.
So here comes big dumb 18-year-old Clint up at the Naval Academy Prep School in Newport, Rhode Island. And Newport's amazing during the summer and even in the fall and in the spring. And then somewhere right after Thanksgiving, it turns into The Shining. It's terrifying. Like, and I walked in. There was a kid from born in Arkansas, raised in Texas. I walked to this place. I was like, "Hey, do y'all have biscuits and gravy?" And they do. Usually, like, "Do I look like I got biscuits?" And he just rounds like, "Just say no." Like, okay, you don't have them, right? But the Northeast, man, it is gorgeous in the fall.
We
It's
love it.
incredible.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
So, thanks for that background. That's awesome. There's stuff about you that I'm learning every day. So what I want to do now is we kind of pivot more to the pursuit elite context of this, and one of the things I get to say when I share with people is, hey, there's one. I'm really intentional about broadening the aperture of leadership. I mean, when I got to come and speak for your company, it was really kind of as you were taking the helm. One of the things that was fun to say is like, hey, if you're in this room, you're a leader. Now there's positional authority, right? But leading is a verb. And if you're leading, you're a leader. If you're driving, you're a driver. If you're swimming, you're a swimmer. If you're diving, you're a diver. We're defined by our actions. And we define leadership as being looked to in a particular moment to perform an action or make a decision based on your unique gifts and abilities. And that was what was so fun for me, is to watch you step into that role and really empower every one of your teammates. Like, hey, you're here for a reason, and I expect you to be a leader. When we look to you, do this thing that you're great at, right? And the other thing we say is we talk about these 5 outcomes, right? There's bad, there's average, there's good, there's excellent, and elite. And if it's our passion or our profession, we should want to be somewhere between excellent and elite. And one of the things that I think maybe the first time I was telling you, you almost finished the sentence, and we were over there at Bell, and I said the difference between being excellent and elite is you're not done yet. And like you kind of like not done yet. And so this not done yet concept is something I think people love being around people who aren't done yet. And so when I use this phrase, not done yet, like this person who's just kind of like, they're going to do what? And I think you being part of the not done yet kind is very evident just by this last 5 minutes of our conversation. Like, yeah, we did this and we did this, and I'm thinking about doing this and all this other stuff. Who leaps to your mind? When I ask this question, it's a hard question because typically with people like us, there's so many right answers, right? So that's why I say A, not the, right? Because we've been so influenced and so blessed by other people. When I talk about someone who's not done yet, who leaps to your head? Like who's an example of someone who's just not done yet, who just finds the next great thing to go try and do?
Yeah, well, I'd say currently,
Sure.
right? I'd have to say, somebody like an Elon Musk leaps to mind.
Yeah.
Constantly pushing the bounds, thinking of new and now he's a little on the edge out there, right? I mean, he's
super not done.
He's super not done.
yet.
Yeah, I mean, he needs to. Yeah, and he might need to like maybe bake it a little bit longer till it gets a little more done. But
Ready, fire, aim.
My son follows him on Twitter, and sometimes he's like, "Mom, what?" And so that's somebody who's constantly pushing the not done yet. So it's good to hold people like that up as somebody to watch. But then there's also folks that you want to keep your eye on that are not done yet, but are still. Quite honestly, I have a super high regard for President Bush. I mean, I constantly watch someone who has served our country and has served our state, who then decides, I'm going to learn how to paint.
Yeah.
And I'm going to go figure out how to then take those paintings and use that to influence things that I care about, like veterans or immigration or so that's somebody who's not done yet. And to me, it's something that tells us that it doesn't matter how old you are.
Right.
You can always always be pushing you're not done yet, right? So if I ever get to the point where I'm like, hey, I'm ready to pack it in,
Right.
boy, just go ahead and put me in the ground, because there's no point left, right? So, somebody like a President Bush is somebody who I think I watch as a not done yet, as kind of one of those beacons.
That's great. What about from your childhood? Didn't you go like, hey, that person is inspirational to me? I mean, it sounds like your mom.
Yeah.
Your mom's a great example of someone who just kind of found another ridgeline and kept pursuing that ridgeline, and nothing really ruled itself out, right?
Yeah, I mean, to this day, my mom is constantly, almost to the point of annoyance. It's like, what can I do? What can I do? I mean, she's just a constant ball of energy. I think she's super inspirational. And it's ironic, but one of my favorite teachers of all time was Miss Diane Nelson, who was my algebra and geometry teacher, who, when I got to high school, there was a female math teacher, right? So,
so she was living out what your mom said was possible.
Yeah, so who encouraged me to keep on keeping on. And then I think the final one would probably be Dennis Kissinger, who was my youth pastor.
Oh, yeah.
So there was definitely a lot of pouring into my life by Dennis Kissinger.
So when we look at this concept, call them being, hey, the not done kind, like I'm not done yet, right? If there's something that could be associated with you, hey, she's not done yet being like this. Like what would you want to be known for as not ever being done doing this or exhibiting this quality?
Yeah. So it's interesting because I just had this conversation about purpose about a week ago with someone that we were talking about, hey, I need a purpose to live for. I need something to be thinking about. And I said, I've done a lot of thinking on that myself. And my purpose in life is to make sure that everyone that I come across, that I leave an imprint on their lives that permanently changes the trajectory of theirs.
Wow.
And so whatever that may look like,
Sure.
right? And I certainly intend that it to be a positive change,
Right.
right, for that trajectory. If it's negative, I'm sorry. Right?
Well, but sometimes love doesn't feel like love, though. Like
Right.
sometimes,
Right. Correction.
It takes you a couple of years to realize that, being a dream crusher for the purposes of producing a better dream is not a bad thing, but it's not necessarily felt like that in the beginning.
And I'll mess the quote up, but Churchill said that, right? I mean, it's you need to have a life well lived, is a life remembered,
That's
right?
right.
So I mean, it's in order for it to be meaningful, we want it to be remembered, and
So you want to never be done being a person of impact.
Yeah.
Positive impact.
Positive impact.
That's awesome. So when we talk about the pursuit points, we talk about, hey, not the difference between being excellent as lead is, are you done or you're not done? And then I remember, and you heard me tell the story about my senior enlisted saying, hey, sir, the reward for excellence is no punishment. I'm not here to be excellent. I'm here to be lead. No, I'm not done yet, right? And so I remember after you told me that, I went down and I said, all right, well, what are they not done doing? And this part of my story. I was, my father passed away when I was young. And so I just picked these percentages of people that I saw in him and that I wanted to see in myself. So I pursued these percentages of these people, and they're incredibly diverse. It was men, it was women, it was husbands, it was wives, it was mothers, it was fathers. It was just that particular percentage. And when my chief told me that, all of a sudden they all made sense to me despite their diversity. They just weren't. They got to the X where everybody else said they wanted to get, and then they got restless and they pick another ridgeline to go. So I remember writing down like, hey, what are they not done doing? And that's when and if you've heard me give Pursuing a Lead, or anybody give Pursuing a Lead, what you know is there's 5 pursuit points, and here's they are really quickly. Elites are balanced. They create high ground for hard days because they know the hard days are coming. Elites are curious, which is probably one of the reasons I wanted to. I loved watching you be and stay curious. And as I've heard more of your story, I've realized that that's a pretty persistent quality. That's something that's been with you for a long time. Elites want to find out. They don't want to be found out. So they ask the question, right? Elites are tribal. They know they need something more than themselves, do something bigger than themselves, and are always trying to be a part of something bigger than themselves. Elites are intentional. They always know why they're doing what they're doing. They may be wrong, but they're not wandering, And elites are authentic. They preach from their pain and they share their scars. So of those 5, balance, curiosity, tribalism, intentionalism, and authenticity, which one's the hardest?
I would say the scariest is authenticity, right? So the scariest,
especially in a leadership position.
yeah, the scariest is authenticity, but the hardest is probably staying curious, because in my role, right, in a publicly traded company where it's quarter over quarter and you have to deliver certain numbers, it's easy to get head down and working towards a 90-day goal.
Because it's we talk about this a lot, how, as athletes, and a lot of times at the tactical level, effort is a ping and outcome is a result. And you get that pretty quickly. And as the higher you go in leadership, it's like a ping, an active sonar, and it just takes a long time to get that feedback. Like, hey, did what I do on Tuesday matter, right?
That's why, I mean, things like mowing your grass or something is very gratifying, because you can get some instant, right?
I did that. Effort
done.
output,
check it off, and but I would say staying curious is a constant effort for me. I mean, I try to make book lists for myself so that I'm constantly learning and growing. I've got 3 for my Christmas reading that I'm going to try to go get after, and then somebody else added one more for me. But also, being able to look up at that 1, 3, and 5 year look for the team. What drives me in it is making sure that I know that what I have to do is not for my end state, because now the responsibility is not just for me and my family. The decisions that I make and the choices that I make right now impact the entire organization. And so while that's both terrifying, it is hugely rewarding.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, there's something about being in charge, and if you don't like it, then you shouldn't try.
Yeah, that's what I tell people. It was like, I want to be a CEO. I'm like, well, then you've never been a CEO.
Right.
because if you're a good CEO and you mean it, you're promising yourself nothing but hard days, because you're taking a percentage of everybody else's hard day.
Right.
There's no day off. And I remember telling my bride this back when kind of all this quarantine, all this other stuff started. I said, babe, leaders eat last. Like, we're about to figure out who means what they say, because the rubber's about to meet the road on leadership. And we're going to see who means it and who's just saying stuff, right? And leadership means being willing to take a percentage of everybody else's hard day every day, right?
Yeah, the last 9 months have been very trying to try and both absorb for others their pain and their frustration, balance your own kind of pain and frustration and aggravation, but at the same time, kind of keep your head up and say, okay, look, we still have to think about, what are we doing in a year from now? What are we doing 3 years from now? What are we doing 5 years from now? How do we make sure that we stay on the edge of things? What are some new things we can go try out?
We'll talk about this a little bit later as we get kind of some of the Textron Systems stuff. But one of the things I think is neat, as you were talking about, is talking about directly impacting families from a leadership position. But we're sitting in a room with a guy who fought at the ground level, and some of the systems y'all are working on at Textron that are supporting the ground fighter. The 25-year-old door kicker. I mean, the level of satisfaction you get from putting something in the hands of someone who's going to do amazing things under really austere circumstances. I mean, it's pretty cool. It's pretty neat to be driving innovation and all those things at that level.
My nephew just graduated boot camp Paris Island on November 13th of this year.
So he'll judge all other Marines for the rest of his life.
Yes.
Yeah, there's 2 types of Marines. There's Paris, and then there's Hollywood, right? Yeah.
So, and Caleb, it impresses the heck out of me, because here's a kid who was born in 2002, so has lived his entire life in a world where we've been at war in this country, right? So he has been his entire upbringing has been around this, and still graduated high school and said, I'm going to raise my right hand and serve this country and live out what I believe in our core values to be. And so I use that as fuel for all of my folks of, this is personal.
Yeah.
What we do is personal.
Right.
The things that we build had better be built right. Because it needs to work the first time. So it's very important.
That's neat. That's got to be gratifying to hear as an infantry guy, going like, man, people who were giving us stuff really meant it, and they really cared about it. That's what I think is so amazing about Ross's generation. Like we Desert Storm, and I'm not diminishing our seasons of service in the least, but we knew there was potential for our nation to be in conflict. That's why we went to Service Academy. everybody that joined after, went to our service academies after, they know. They knew what they're getting into. And Ross knew exactly what he was getting into when he enlisted. Maybe to a percentage. As much as anybody can represent it.
To an extent, it's funny. My sister, obviously, we talked about who she worked for, but she worked on a program that we directly utilized in Afghanistan, the ITAS. And I've never asked her, and she knew that we utilized that. I bet it was probably personal for her too, but I've never asked her. But I'm pretty sure from the type of person that she is that it was.
She's intentional. She's an intentional.
Absolutely, absolutely. She's very deliberate, and so. But yeah, so that really rang home with me. It rings true with me, and that really was one of my questions. Is how do you keep it with the guys on the ground? And I think it's always in the forefront of your mind. It sounds like it's like this is what we're doing.
Yeah.
If you're not on board, you're in the wrong spot because we're supporting these people.
And you probably focus more on ground elements now than because when you were with Bell, that's aviation platform inserting. But now with some of the platforms you're working on, with the weapon systems and the which could be a whole other podcast just talking about how and these guys with some of the ground stuff that you're innovating. Yeah, those guys are amazing. That's got to be particularly satisfying. So to navigate through these pursuit points, so authenticity requires the most courage, right? And that's one thing I noticed. I worked for amazing leaders, and one of the things I always appreciated was a leader asking me a question about something I could see them believing I thought they already knew, right?
Sure.
And for me, it never diminished it when a leader came in and said, "Hey, how do I use this?" Because it made me know that I was needed. Like if you're perfect, you don't need me.
Right.
And if you're better than me at everything, you don't need me. So the authentic leader is an incredibly attractive leader to work for because it just makes you want to be with them more because they're letting you know, like who doesn't want to know that they're needed? And when you're an authentic leader, you're inviting people in to solve the problem. Because if you could solve it without them, you do it. You'd already done it, right?
Well, I mean, that's again, I'm a big person on quotes, but that's what Patton used to say, right? If we're both saying yes, one of us is redundant, right? So, I mean, we did not a podcast, but we did kind of a Microsoft Teams meeting with my women's network just before schools were trying to figure out what to do during the COVID season. And so I did it with a bunch, probably about 115, mostly women, but women and men who are trying to figure out what do we do, right? How do we navigate this with this hybrid schools, and how do we still work? And it was just heart-wrenching, the decisions that people were having to make about their kids. Yeah. And I broke down in the middle of and I got so mad at myself. I'm like, you're not supposed to cry. You're not supposed to cry in front of, there's no crying in baseball,
Nice
and,
quote.
so, I mean, I just get, it's such a pride thing, right, to not cry, but I just felt so deeply for what they're going through. And I got so much feedback about, man, that was so real. We didn't know you cried. We didn't know you had tears.
Yeah, I'm the Dick Vermeil in Navy SEALs, man. I cry all the time. That's why God made me big. I was like, you make fun of Mr. Bruce. He threw a guy through a wall last time. Made fun of him. But I always appreciated people who are. I want to follow authenticity. Yeah. I do. I want to know that you believe in this as much as I do, and as you're passionate. And I talk to young entrepreneurs, and when they talk about, hey, I'm partnering, I'm like, well, hold on, what does partnering mean to you? Because partnering to me means it hurts you as much as it hurts me if we lose, right? And so if someone says they're a capital partner in this, you're not equally yoked unless it hurts them as much as it hurts you. And that's not always a money thing. Like, we both know Roger Staubach. Roger Staubach's amazing. I've known him for 30 years. I keep waiting for him to not be awesome. It's not happening. It's super frustrating. But if Roger and I partnered in something and we both lost $10,000, like Roger, he wouldn't feel that $10,000. $10,000 loss to me is significant. Sure. But I would end up consoling Roger. Yeah. Because he would hate it so much. And so we're equally yoked because it hurts him as much as it hurts me. Maybe a different form of currency, but he's a proud guy. Sure. And so, and authenticity is how you see that. Authenticity is when you're like, oh, this person really feels this thing. So I've always felt like authenticity is this really powerful thing. So authenticity requires the most courage. Curiosity is...
To me, it's the biggest responsibility.
Yeah.
As a leader, your curiosity, for me, in my role, my curiosity is my responsibility. And that's what I have to do for my team. And you know, you brought up the Howe brothers. I mean, that was one of the biggest forms of curiosity when I stepped back and looked at our portfolio of what we do. I mean, we do unbelievable unmanned products. I mean, we do unmanned air. We're in the Shadow system, the Aeroson system. We are the first ever unmanned surface vehicle for the Navy.
Yeah.
We do the ship-to-shore connector, which is fly-by-wire, which you could unman, the ship-to-shore connector, 95-foot hovercraft. You know, so we're in all this unmanned space. And I said, guys, you know, we could be the only company on the planet that does unmanned air, sea, and land. But I need a product.
Right.
And so I'm sitting at home watching Jay Leno's Garage with my husband, and this tank comes flying across the berm with Leno and this twin in it. So I Googled him and I called him and I said, hey, I'm flying up to see you. And
I remember this because we talked about this.
Yeah.
We talked about this when you first ran into him.
Yeah, and here we are. I mean, today is actually our 2-year anniversary from the when we acquired Howe and Howe, and we're now the Army's robotic combat vehicle medium program of record, and we also do small robots for nuclear, biological, and chemical systems, and firefighting robots. And
I don't believe you on the hovercraft. I think we need one here, and we need to test it on Lake Ray Hubbard. Otherwise, it doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. All these prototype vehicles need to come to the Ready Lab so we can test them.
We might can arrange something.
That'd be amazing. Yeah, it's so fun to kind of pay attention via LinkedIn and all this other stuff to the innovations that's happening. And as a leader, I think it's incredibly. If you expect curiosity of others, then you better exhibit it yourself.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, like it's kind of those things like I that's one of the things I loved about my community is one, if you got a great plan, it can take anybody's questions, right? When people ask questions, you give them layers of what went into the plan that you may not always get. And then also you build relational capital to when you don't have time. If you've got a history of explaining things and you're like, hey, we got to go, you can retreat into that relational capital where, hey, he's always told me why before, and the only reason and he can't tell me why now, I'm just going to trust him, right? I'm going to trust her, right? So,
my son, so we started talking about this upstairs. My son came walking through the kitchen about 18 months ago to get more batteries for his Xbox controller, which is another thing. I mean, if innovation, come on, Elon. I mean, why do we still have AA, AAA? I mean, at some point we got to work on these batteries.
Yeah, and what happened to the B battery, by the way? Like I read this comedian one time, and he's like, you know what? What happened to that B battery? I'm like, son of a gun.
Yeah.
What happened? They skipped it. Like there's A, and then there's C, and there's AA, and there's D, and no B battery.
No B batteries.
Where is it?
But Hayden comes in and he's looking to get some batteries for his controller. But he looks at me and he was like, "Hey, Mom." And this kid. We could have a whole podcast on him, just his random thoughts. He's the Jack Handy of his age. But he's like, "Hey, Mom, I can control everything I need to control with these 3 fingers." And then off he walks. And all of a sudden, I start thinking about that, and I'm like, okay, he can shoot, he can drive, he can control, he can do everything with these 3 fingers on his Xbox controller. And he's in there playing Call of Duty, Halo, Fortnite, all the rest. And then I start thinking about, that's how we control our Shadow. That's how we control our Aeroson system. That's how we're going to control our Ripsaw.
Oh, wow.
So we drive our Ripsaw with a Xbox controller. And here's why. Because Hayden is the soldier.
You're acclimated to it. That
Absolutely.
Generation is acclimated to this type of functionality.
He is our soldier 10 years from now, and that is going to be the user interface that they're going to expect. These 3 fingers. They're not going to want a joystick. They're not going to want to type. They're going to want to swipe and look, and they're going to look at 15 different screens. Our children's capacity.
They're multi-sensory.
It's unbelievable. And they're frustrated with us.
And their processing speed.
Because we're not keeping up with their abilities. So
I asked my daughters, they're like, hey, my Insta face isn't working. They're like, Insta? Like, what? And like, yeah, this is a Snapgram. Like, what? I don't understand. They're like, that Stone Age. Right? So now I love hearing that. We've got 3 girl dad questions for you.
Okay.
Right? So what are you most excited about for young girls coming up right now?
Sky's the limit. Sky's the limit.
And you kind of lived that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Look, I mean, number one, I think what I'm most excited about is I do feel like our young men are so much more accepting, right? So I mean, I had a conversation with somebody earlier today, even the amount of remarks, comments, things that I went through
Yeah.
probably pales in comparison to what the generation went through
Sure.
before me.
Sure.
But it's still imprinted on me,
Mhm.
right? I love the fact that our young women now
Mhm.
shouldn't have to deal with that, right?
Mhm.
They shouldn't have to deal with, or won't have to deal with
Yeah.
that. When my son was 3, we went out to dinner, and my husband said, "Hey, buddy, how was school?" Because he had a fireman and policeman. He said, "Did you like that?" "Yeah." He says, "Well, what do you want to be when you grow up?" He says, "What do you mean?" He says, "When you grow up, do you want to be a fireman? Do you want to be a policeman?" He's like, "Oh, I want to be a dad. My husband's a stay-at-home dad."
Oh, wow.
So from my son's perspective,
I'm not crying. You're crying.
because from my son's perspective, mom goes off to work.
Yeah.
So we're raising a generation of not just our young women, who the sky's the limit, but of our young men who view them as equal partners.
Yeah.
And so for me, I think it's really cool to see that we're moving in that direction.
Yeah.
We're-
The
it's
meritocracy rules.
It's a
Right? Who-
partnership
who
meritocracy.
Who can
Yeah.
do the job gets
Absolutely.
the job, right?
Absolutely.
And it has been really fun. I've been very blessed with just who I've gotten to meet and all these other things through Run and Hold Fast and Give Pursuit and Lead. But I got to work with the U.S. Women's national team with Jill Ellis and listen to an athlete's an athlete, right? And there's no distinction between preparing the mental and the physical for that level of performance. It's really fun. I love watching my girls grow up with an abundance of people to chase.
Yeah.
I kind of say chase, pace, and pull. Like, who are you chasing, who you can pace with, and who are you pulling behind you? And it is exciting to see how many things girls can dream about, right? So we actually, what have we seen change for women? And then what would be your encouragement, if you can recall these seasons of your life? Like, what is a good thing I can do as a dad for an 11-year-old, a 15-year-old, and a 17-year-old? Because those are my girls' age. My
Tell them they're
11-year-old
beautiful.
Yeah.
Tell them they're beautiful. I mean,
every day.
every day, because it is a self-image, and I'm seeing us only because I'm raising a boy too. I mean, we are such an image-driven society, and it's such a bad thing,
That's
right? So just reinforcing for them over and over and over again their beauty and who they are internally and externally, and making sure they have that confidence from their dad is will take them forever. I mean, my dad, I'm a daddy's girl, okay? It was hard for me when I went to the academy and I started playing, I went there playing basketball, tore my knee up and, only lasted one season. But I went to my first practice and I'm looking around. My dad wasn't there.
That's the first practice he wasn't at.
Wasn't that, right? I mean,
Wow.
I went to from the time I was 8 years old, my dad was at every practice, every game, everything. And to look around and not have my dad sitting in the stands
Yeah.
was just really, that was hard,
Yeah.
right? But having that confidence from your dad really set me up to look for the right partner in life, and knowing who that partner was. Look, I couldn't do what I do without Jim. I am the CEO and the leader and have the ability to take care of 4,000 plus employees because I have a partner at home who's willing to sacrifice and be that stay-at-home dad for me. And without that, I couldn't do this.
That's so encouraging. One of the things, and you told me this the first time you heard me say it, when we talk about intentionalism and at least know why they're doing what they're doing, and the way I describe it, you got to have a high why and a big why. And your high why is what they say about you when you're gone. The stats on death are really convincing. And your big why is why do you use your time, treasure, and talent? And you've heard me say this, and I said I just want to be the kind of guy my girls want to marry with, a purposeful, passionate, protective, and a provider, right? And I love hearing that because I try to set the standard, and I since they were young. But Maddie was born while I was overseas, and I came home to this 8-month-old daughter. And as a guy without a daddy, becoming a daddy is the scariest thing ever for me. I was like, do they break? I was holding her. I was like, I'm about to sneeze. Take her. I was like, I don't want to, because I break things on accident all the time, right? But I would tell them, hey, I'll always try to father on purpose, and always try to live on purpose. And I do these things imperfectly, but I go, hey, honor God first, do right, always defend the weak, always try hard, be a leader, and Daddy loves you so much. And the girls go to the moon and back, right? And then that's what's cool about that is knowing that I'm getting some of it right, right? But these ages are different too,
They
like
are.
11 and 15 and 17, and how fast the world's coming at them, and then they're different as girls too. So it's neat to see that, hey, this language expressed to them is relevant regardless of
Doesn't
what
matter.
age.
It doesn't matter what age. I mean, and it'll mean different things to them depending the circumstance they're in. But that standard you set will be the standard they hold for that partner they have in the future,
Yeah.
and that's important.
The other thing is I make anybody who wants to date them come pick them up here at work.
Well,
And I usually have Ross or Rabbit or one of the other guys. They got to come in through the shoot house. Like, hey, Mr. Bruce is back there in the shoot house doing some hostage rescue. Why don't you go say hi to him real quick? And, you know, my freakazoid little brother here squatting like 900 pounds and just mad balling the guy. Right? So,
Jim had Melissa's first date for homecoming, come over and asked to take her, and he was sitting on the couch, and Jim said, all right. He's like, just know that's my only daughter,
yeah.
and I'm not afraid to go back to jail.
I'll go back to jail. I love that. I love that.
I'll go back to prison.
I'll go back. It's the greatest scene. You go to watch Bad Boys 2
Exactly.
on YouTube, the dating scene.
When Reggie shows
Red,
up.
how old are you, Reg? And,
Well, you look 30.
you look 30. You know how to fight? That's a great scene, man. I love that scene.
Yeah.
And, that's I tell the girls, like, all boys are dumb. And the reason I know this is because I was a dumb boy. I was good, but I was dumb. So let's pivot here to Textron, because I've been fascinated by innovation companies. Kind of as a guy who's dependent on their innovation, it's been fascinating to me. So it was fun watching you lead at Bell, and then when you have an opportunity to go over and lead at Textron Systems, there was like this youthful, there was like a giddiness in your voice, and I remember when you first said, "Hey, look at how and how." So how and how was. What's exciting about Textron Systems, and what's different about what you're doing there than what you've gotten to do at other places? And it's not a better than, worse than.
Sure.
It's a different than.
Sure. Well, like, I mean, I think first and foremost, it's back to the whole point about being in charge. It all kind of rides and falls. I mean, my head's on the block, right? I mean, it's I'm not able to hide behind somebody else's decisions. These are the decisions that I ultimately get held accountable to, which is equally thrilling and terrifying at the same time, right? But the way you do that is you build an elite team around you, and you make sure you listen to that team and you take their advice and you put together a group that'll challenge you and challenge your thoughts. And look, I mean, nothing that we've accomplished at Systems in the last 3.5 years has been anything that I've had any great, big, bright thoughts on. This has been a group effort. I mean, I tell my guys all the time and gals that, hey, we're the Avengers, right? You know, some days it's Thor's day, and some days it's Iron Man's day, and some days it's Black Widow's day. But you know, I mean, we're all the Avengers, and we're crushing it and crushing it
That's
together.
So cool.
But it's, you know, the thing about the innovation side of it, we could do better. That's the thing I think it's always that I'm always thinking about myself on. You saw the list about, you know, we're in the top 50, but where we landed on that list, I was like, oh, we could be better.
That's right. There's room.
We could get higher on the list.
That's right.
So.
That's neat. What? So as it relates to, like, what? And I gotta be. Well, I don't have to be careful about the question. You got to be careful about the answer. I want to be respectful of it.
Sure.
So as you look at like that next 5 years, what innovations, and you think about someone like Ross, you know, 25-year-old door kicker, what are you excited about deploying out into that landscape where war fighters and rescuers, right? A lot of people don't understand the humanitarian efforts that our military does and rescuing people and protecting people. It's not all about door kicking. It's about creating space for hope where hard times are, right? What are you excited about that's kind of in the future that you can't wait for people to hear about that Textron Systems is?
Look, I mean, I think the Army has been very intentional about their modernization. They have been just at the grind for 2 decades. And they have, in the last couple of years, stopped and said, hey, we're going to recapitalize and modernize because we know we need to be ready for the fight of 10, 15, 20 years from now. So because they were very clear with their priorities, we took a very clear step and said, okay, we're right there with you. We're going to get ready with you. So we're working on things like the next generation squad weapon, which is plastic ammo. So that's kind of cool.
Have you read up on that at all?
No, I have not.
I'll send you guys a link. I mean,
It's pretty interesting.
You said
And
plastic.
when you understand the logistical implications of transitioning to a casing that's lighter, and you tease that out to understand how many more people you can fit, how much longer you can go, how much faster than you can go, you can't change how much water weighs. You can't change how much certain things weigh, but when you can reduce the weight of elements, you make
40% of the weight out of your.
Oh no,
your
yeah,
walking
I
system.
understand the implications.
So imagine,
for some reason,
climbing.
I thought we were talking about slinging plastic and not lead.
No. So the casing,
casing,
of
right.
itself is plastic, and then you actually telescope in the projectile itself into the bullet itself.
Wow.
So now it looks like a Coke can
Sure.
instead of like your traditional
Right.
Coke bottle.
I got you.
So how many rounds did you carry humping up from base camp to battle?
Base camps at Everest.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, our standard load is 210 rounds. So
Which weigh how much?
7 magazines. With the magazine, 15 pounds.
Okay, so we can probably take about 7-8 pounds out of that.
Yeah, and that weight is condensed right here.
Yeah,
on your
not
chest.
just what you're carrying, where you're carrying it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and then you think about the different types of gunners that use the same ammo that we're speaking about now. Those guys are carrying. I forget. It's every 100 rounds is 20 or no. Well, we just said 210 rounds is. Let's say that it's going to be 15 pounds per drum.
Yeah.
Those guys are carrying multiple drums here,
Right.
and in their kit. You know,
Right.
that's the.
And then you're carrying someone else's rounds too, because everybody's a mag mule at some point in time.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. The implications, I could see them being.
And then you think about lift, and you think about
Well, it affects everything. Weight affects everything. I mean,
right.
when I was in Italy, for instance, we didn't have coins.
Mhm.
We had cardboard coins that they gave out at the PX because it was too expensive to ship coins. And it was the same thing when I got overseas. When I was in Afghanistan, if you made it to a big base with a PX,
right.
when they give you your change, they give you cardboard vouchers essentially,
Yeah.
instead of actual,
Wow.
copper. Yeah, because of the weight,
That is pretty interesting. You can carry more faster and longer.
Yeah, so that's not totally lost on me, and I get that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So we're working on that, and we're in the Army's working on their down selecting on that over the next couple of years. So that's at the squad level, and then
Yeah.
when you start looking at the ground level, I mean you've seen the ripsaw for the robotic combat vehicles and how they're going to interface with across. In the Army, still trying to figure out their TTP, their tactics, techniques, and procedures of how they're going to work with that. But I mean, look, this thing will hum.
Yeah.
It will hum. It can go 25 miles an hour, all electric.
It's
if
quiet.
You want it quiet.
That's the thing. Like in the sound footprint is so critical when you have a reduction of an audio signature. Listen, speed, surprise, violence of action, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so you just ticked two of those things: speed. Now we're increasing on surprise,
Right.
and violence of action is what we're best in the world at.
Our future tactical UAS system, which is the Aerosonde system with a hybrid quad, which the Shadow has been in service for 2 decades. Shadow's great, but it's loud, right? And we know it's loud. So we've developed a system that is quieter, that carries the payload that's required to send it out ahead and do what it needs to get done. And so there's a lot of really kind of cool technology, and the Army's been very intentional on it. So.
That's great. That's got to be fun going to work every day, going like, what amazing thing are we going to invent, right?
Oh, that's just the Army stuff.
Oh,
Right?
yeah.
So we're on the right over here in Fort Worth.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, our guys have won over $500 million of support contracts for the Air Force and the Navy and the Marines to do Red Air. So we own the 3rd largest Air Force in
Doing
the,
op for it, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
So we have F1s flying out there, and they just do really. The whole team at Textron Systems does some amazing
That's cool.
stuff.
So as we kind of come towards the end here, because I could talk about this stuff forever. One of the things I love doing is especially with Ross and some of the other co-hosts we get to have is, do you have any questions for us? Is there anything that you find interesting, kind of from his experience or my particular experience, and any questions we can answer for you just about our anything that'd helpful to you and your tribe as you lead them.
Yeah. So I guess first off, I find it fascinating. I'm not sure if the question is right, but the intentionality with which you come up with your, first of all, your alliteration and your syntax is
Just being Southern Baptist.
Yes. Well, fair enough.
Well versed.
Fair
in
enough.
3s, 5s, and alliteration.
3s, 5s, and alliteration. First,
I'll
second,
throw
fourth.
some acrostics down the heartbeat.
First, second, and fourth verse,
100%.
right? So, but the intentionality with which you have come up with that, is it through your own self-study? Do you work with Ross and others? Do you guys collectively come up with your intentional focus on, when you talk about ball fields and I mean.
So for me, I've always tried to advantage myself because I know I'm not a very talented person, so I got to know where I'm going out of the gate, right? I don't have a lot of margin. So for me, I was always really blessed to just kind of be around intentional people and recognize the beginning with the end in mind is a pretty critical deal. And then the rest of it for me has, it doesn't really change that much. I want to be the kind of guy I want my girls to marry one day, and I want to work for the best leaders in America and create amazing careers for veterans and their athletes as they transition, so we can win the war on veteran and suicide with the power of daily wins and a good day's work, right? So knowing that that's an end state, there's tremendous efficiency when you're iterating through different things, right? And I learn a lot from the questions people ask when I get done speaking, and that's probably my favorite part. If I could just show up and do a Q&A, I'd do that all day long. But we foster a very curious environment here, and no one's above reproach when it comes to critique. I probably say I'm sorry more than anybody else in the company. I was like, oh, sorry about that. But I think curiosity is critical here. I think everybody knows that they're safe, but their ideas aren't. And when I say that, you're safe, but your ideas aren't, which means we're going to murder board everything and see if it works or not, right? But I think that's just kind of it's a byproduct of just how I've always been led and all these other things. And then simplicities, like for me, reducing things to a simple form, right? How do you explain building a holistic life? Well, for me, fundamentally, it comes down to a map. We talked about this. People go, what's your favorite weapon? What's your favorite gun? I go, you asking me what my favorite weapon is or what my favorite gun is? And they're like, same thing. I'm like, it's not. A weapon is what I use to win. A gun is a tool, right? So if I have the map, I've got everything. I know where you'll set up. I know where I'll be. And so for me, the visual of a map is a very simple one. And then for me, when I talk about the pursuit points, right, they're not linear. They're not sequential. Balance, curiosity, tribalism, intentionalism, and authenticity. They're like 5 lanes on the interstate that you said you want to go to. And at any given time, one of them may be more dominant than the other, right? Sometimes you're straddling lanes, but you need to be able to get into the next one whenever. So constantly reducing that to the easiest way to say it, the easiest way to hear it. For me, those are the maps I want to win on the ball field, on the battlefield, on the boardroom, and the breakfast table. And so reduction, simplicity, and allowing your ideas to be refined by someone who's got a different experience and different perspective. I've just always benefited from that. So why would we stop doing it now? Like Ross can tell me my ideas. He's really fast at telling me how dumb some ideas are. He's like, hey, you want me to let you finish? You want me to tell you this is dumb now? I'm like, well, let me finish, but never mind. I'm going back to my office.
Yeah, I'm taking my ball going out.
I know. I think you come to things with a sense of urgency by virtue of just being a ground operator, man, being an infantryman.
I've learned to be deliberate. You've used that word several times, and that's a characteristic or quality about somebody, that I think is key. Is being deliberate, being concise, and actually being straight to the point. Like for instance, I've been marking off questions that you actually asked her that you had no idea were on my list. 90% of them are crossed off now. These are just natural things that I wanted, that I took time and deliberately wrote out, that I said, okay, if there's dead space, these are the questions that I would like to ask. This is the information that I would like to know. And now as we're kind of like wrapping up here, the only questions left here are like relating to culture, like the culture of the company, rounding it out now. And that was kind of like where I saw this going. So I think that, doing especially what I'm doing now and coming from an accounting background, being deliberate and being just being that.
Well, seeking
So-
efficiency.
So I'm curious about that then. So what culture do you seek out when you're looking to go somewhere? Like, what does culture mean to you?
Oh, wow. If you would have asked me 10 years ago, so you start off talking about diversity, and we were having trouble pronouncing diversity 10 years ago in the Army. And y'all talked about the Air Force, and that was one of the questions I wanted to ask you was how diverse, was it back then?
Not very.
Yeah. But you said you were coming too. It was coming. The first female graduate at Annapolis. In the Air Force. So with diversity, or with the culture, like I want to feel free to ask questions, have actual dialogue. If I'm an employee working for somebody, and we're at a decision making level, we want to be able to ask questions. We want to be able what we call. He said, what do you call murder it up? I call it poking holes in someone's idea. It's like, I don't know, man. I don't think that's going to work. It's what I do to him all day. I want to be able to do that because that fosters growth. That fosters thinking.
Day.
Yeah.
On everything.
So
the worst thing is he's right most of the time.
So if you come into a room, right, because the CEO is always last into the meeting, and everyone's sitting there talking back and forth across the table, in my mind, that's a good thing. If they're talking about what the meeting is going to be about, because no one's in there scared about what's going to happen. I'm like, I hope they're not mad, but we're actually talking and cutting up. So no, I think it's going to be more like this, or we need to focus more. We need to shift left this way, or right the other way. That's probably a good sign, and that's a culture that I would feel comfortable in. At a decision making level.
Well, you surround yourself with talent as a leader, then why would you stop? Why would you not listen to that talent?
Yeah, and like you would come in and just sit down and just no, please continue. Like I want to know what y'all think. I want to see this dialogue back and forth. I want to see how this plays out. I think that's important.
No, I think that's beautiful, and I want to kind of file that away and because what's so hard, and we started at the very beginning of this. What's so hard in the role that I'm in is you do get in that 90-day cycle, right? You get into that 90, and at some point you start to crush some of that because you've got to move so fast to meet these other obligations
Sure.
that you forget about you don't make enough space to do what you just said.
Yeah.
And so making sure we're deliberate about having that space to have those conversations is key.
Right.
I love that you brought that. I was coaching a really, really great executive one time, which that was always kind of a weird thing to start doing. Because I'm like, how am I coaching someone who I think is better than me at this certain thing, right? But we were talking about this concept of an open door policy, and I'm like, do you have an open door policy? He's like, yeah. I'm like, how's it work? He's like, no one asks me questions. And I said, because you have if you have an open door policy, but you're not available, you're not accessible, or you're not approachable, then you don't have an open door policy. So I said, do this on Tuesdays from 11 to 1. Say, hey, my door's open. Almost like how professors do it, extra, and EI, extra instruction, right? I said, and so a couple things got to happen. One, you got to be where you say you're going to be. You got to be accessible, and then you can't look busy because the new guy's not going to ask you a question when you look busy. So you need to turn your monitor and be playing solitaire as though you've been waiting for someone to come and talk to you. And then he's a big guy, and I'm like, and you got to become so you're available, you're accessible, and now you're approachable. And I said, what I think is going to happen is one, your time is going to be stewarded very well, because if you have an open door policy and you're very approachable, people are going to take you up on it. Like sometimes, but when you say it's on Tuesdays and Thursdays, that question that can wait till Tuesday probably waits till Tuesday, right? And then he goes, Clint, it's the neatest thing. Like we have like. It's like my office is the place to hang out on Tuesdays and Thursdays, right? And so again, it's creating that space where the timelines don't matter. Because it's disingenuous to say the timelines aren't going to matter because that's the world we live in, right? But say for this next hour and a half, the 90-day timeline doesn't matter.
Yeah. Well, we also think about what we're gaining out of that. What do we gain if I open my office twice a week for 2 hours? What am I getting out of this deal? Am I going to get legitimate questions? Am I going to get complaints? What are we going to gain as a company?
Well, and look, so it also allows for trust. So when you have the opportunity to sit and have that dialogue and have those conversations, you begin to understand how the other person operates, how they think, if they're thoughtful, So then you start to trust that person, and you start trusting where that person's coming from. And that trust accelerates the speed of decision, because then you're able to know when you are in that crunch time, I know that that person has gone through the intellectual rigor to come up with the right questions and have that answered to come and bring this to me. So I can trust them
Yeah.
to go ahead and move out on that recommendation, because I know that they've done the hard work before they've come in to see me.
Yeah.
But it takes, I need to take the time, and everybody else needs to take the time to get to know each other first.
Right.
Trust is so
You
important.
move at the speed of trust. And when we talk about tribalism, when you're a tribe, you see groups of people. They're one of four things. They're gaggles, groups, teams, and tribes. And what distinguishes them is what pulls them together. So a gaggle is yoked together by misery, wrong place, wrong time, wrong choice, right? Then groups are united by preference, and then teams are united by purpose, but that can be an opinion, right? Because adversity hits, and you find out if that purpose is an opinion or a conviction. T.E. Lawrence once said, an opinion can be argued with, but a conviction is best shot, because conviction produces action. And adversity reveals whether this purpose is an opinion or a, but when you cultivate trust, it allows you to move at the speed of trust. And you can see this from a sports perspective, right? Teams just, when you're playing a tribal team, there's a speed and an agility and a flexibility and adaptability that just, I say teams road, tribes flow, right? So, I mean, what are we at from a timeline perspective?
We're at 80 minutes, so an hour 20.
Awesome.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
So, and I've always been fascinated about this. Well, first, y'all are part. Y'all help comprise the S&P, right? 500.
Oh, yeah.
So, like,
we're in the top 200.
207. But okay.
Tell you, he's deliberate.
Yeah, he is. Yeah,
I have to do this all the time.
So with that, there are performance measures there that have to be in place. You talk about 90 days. Like, I was an accountant. I made the 10Ks. I got it. How difficult is it to balance that 90-day, like, oh shit, it's time we got to get some revenue coming through, right? We got to pump our numbers up, with your company's mission, with your company's goal, like with what y'all's mission statement is, right? Is to protect the guy on the ground, to add the best. You want to go, what is it, fly, Zoom, everything above. Like, do you ever feel like you have to compromise?
Mm-mm. So here's what I think we were very intentional about 3.5 years ago, right? And we were in, we were struggling with a lot of different, I would say, some tough contracts that we were in. So we fought our way through those contracts. But we made some very deliberate decisions around things like the RCV, the Next Gen Squad Weapon, the FTUAS. We made some very deliberate efforts around work that we wanted to go win that would provide us an excellent foundation for our future, that would give us the space to be able to not have to get in that crisis mode. And that's what, 2020 has been such a crazy year from a pandemic standpoint, but man, it's been, our win rate, our backlog at Textron Systems is the highest it's been in the history of Textron Systems.
Oh, wow.
It's incredible what the blessings that Textron Systems has
Sure.
achieved. It's unbelievable. But I believe it's because we didn't compromise on those things each quarter.
Yeah. And forward looking, as through the lens of the company, forward looking through the lens of what's warfare going to look like in 10 years. My sister does a lot of that with her company, where she is literally on a team that is supposed to report what are we doing in 5 years? What are we doing in 10 years? Right? Like, we are strictly forward thinking. We're not messing with any current contracts. We're thinking what's next.
Yep.
And I guess that's how you can, answer that question like you just did. It's we're thinking about the future through the lens of our company and what the next generation warfighter, your nephew's going to need.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, in our space, in the defense space, we get a little bit more grace in that regard. I mean, we're not in the, we're not selling iPhones, right? We're not in that kind of consumer where we have a ton of customers out there.
Let me give you pushback, though.
Okay.
I mean, you don't have a ton of customers. You've got one customer.
That's right. We're all battling for them.
Right. How do you balance that? I mean, and what I mean by that is you've got the one customer. So what keeps you honest?
Oh, as far as making sure that we give them the very best?
Yeah,
or,
sure.
well,
The running joke in the military is it came by the lowest bidder, you know?
Yeah, I mean, one, I think having been a contracts officer on the other side, I do think that we make sure on the commodity side, you're probably right. I mean, we may need to scrub that one out of
Yeah.
it. But I mean, on the commodity side, but on from the competition side, right?
Right.
I mean, I do think that the acquisition approach that the government has allows for Textron and Raytheon and Lockheed
100%.
and Boeing
Free
and
markets,
right,
meritocracy.
right. So we are battling with each other, and in
Sure.
some cases it's friendly competition, right?
Right,
We're strange bedfellows, right?
It's
So
prime, subprime.
Right.
Who calls the coin toss? But we all
Correct.
got to play.
we all got to play. But I would say that, I think that where the military is going with the soldier touch points, with allowing the soldiers to come in and work with developing the requirements along the way
That's great.
instead of doing this kind of just
In a
throw it
vacuum,
across.
yeah.
That's where I think that problem lied, where
Yeah.
there was just this kind of RFP you threw out and then you just hoped you got what you bid on.
Sure.
I think we've learned from an acquisition community to do that better.
Yeah. You naturally tightened up your shot group just because you had to.
Yep.
Especially, yeah.
Competition produces that, right?
Absolutely.
Hey,
So-
we're not scrubbing that question. That's a great
No,
question.
no. I love it. It's a great question. So
Thank
as
you.
we kind of draw this to a close a little bit, it's kind of interesting that when I texted you and asked you to be on the podcast, one of the things I said is you're one of the most curious people I know, right? And so and again, after this hour and a half that we've been talking, I won't flinch from that. I mean, it's evident. And one of the things that is when I talk about curiosity, one of the things I say, curiosity is a creator, it's a catalyst, and it's a complacency killer. And I think Ross and I can look at kind of your story and the story that you represent. One, your story, then two, your family story, then three, the story of the company that you represent from a leadership perspective. I can point to parts of your story and say, hey, that curiosity created something that you're really proud of, right? The conversation you had with Jim, like, hey, let's get curious about how we make this work, right? A catalyst, curiosity getting there faster than you would otherwise. That's something I've known about you and Bill and Textron certainly. And then now one of the things I've heard you say over and over again, and it's a really, really important point, is you reject complacency. Curiosity and complacency are incompatible. And so when you don't know what to do, ask questions, because we're not asking questions. It's oil and water. Like curiosity and complacency are mutually exclusive. So when we are curious, one, we continue to perform at a high level. Two, we attract people that want to create something that they're proud of and want to get as good as they can be, as fast as they can be. And that's a good day of work. And it sounds like you get to have a lot of good days of work.
Yeah. I mean, I think, look, again, it comes back to I'm surrounded by an amazing team. I mean, and they make it great days of work.
Yeah.
I mean, it's look, you're right in the sense that, look, I get a lot of phone calls with bad news, right? But the thing is with the team calls with the bad news and then says, okay, but
But here's what we're going to do.
here's what we're going to do.
Yeah.
Right? There is a very rare time that they call them, put it on my plate to fix. They come up with the solutions. They've already worked out the answer. They're either coming to me to say, hey, we just need your blessing,
Right.
or we need some help with resources.
Right.
And one of our key tenets is around servant leadership at Textron Systems. And the whole thing about servant leadership is just empowering your people with the resources to be able to get the job done. That's all it is. And the fact that we're able to flow that through makes it a lot of great days of work.
Yeah, people go, hey, what was it like to lead SEALs? I'm like, you don't lead SEALs, you aim them. Like and the same thing with guys like Ross. Like, you don't lead them, you aim them.
Right.
And you say ridgeline, then you say left and right limits, and then you go resources, and then you go back and you repeat left and right limits because they're going to say they didn't hear you say it. You're like, no, repeat them back to me, because what you're going to do is you're going to break them. You're like, oh, we didn't hear you. Like, no, I know you heard me, but you aim great talent, and then you provide left and right limits, and you drive resources, and hopefully you do it well enough that they let you play every once in a while. Like, hey, can I knock a door down? Fine, let the sir up here, breach a door. Ooh, look at you, right?
Yeah, right.
But Lisa, hey, it is awesome having you here. It's been fun learning more about you, and learning about just the power of curiosity. I just keep coming back to that. And again, this is a podcast. I always want to do podcasts that I'm excited for my girls to listen to, and this is one of them. So, So you are a not done kind for sure.
Not done. I appreciate it, Clint. It's look, your girls have a lot to look up to.
I think she just called me fat.
Large, at least.
Well, I was actually complimenting Amy. So.
No, that's the truth, man. Like, she's amazing.
But,
yeah, the double take that everybody
Sharp.
gets when
I
I
didn't even
walk.
see that one
I
coming.
walk in the room with her, and everybody's like, "What?" Like, this is like. I told Amy, I said, "Listen, I know that guy you're dating right now is good looking, but I'm funny, and he's not gonna be good looking at some point, and I'm just gonna get funnier." And she somehow agreed. So
Look, I'll just leave you with this. And first of all, I am honored to be your first guest.
Yeah, number one.
on the in fact, that's what I always strive for, is to be number one.
there you are.
There you go.
Look, I think the thing that I take away from every single day is, what didn't I do right today, and how can I do it better tomorrow? And I think that's the one curious question. That, you know, if we all can just kind of grow from that every day.
What am I not done doing?
Right. What am I not done doing? And it could be as simple as, you know, was I not nice to that guy that I cut off in the road today, or was it, you know, did I not listen to the team well enough today, or
That's one of the things I say. Hey, what wrongs can I right tomorrow?
wrongs can I right
Mine and
tomorrow?
others.
Yeah.
Right. So, well, hey, this has been awesome, Ross. Thanks for pulling this together. Lisa, thanks for coming. If you want to get excited about some stuff Textron Systems is doing, just go to YouTube and type it up and pay attention to Lisa's LinkedIn. I mean, every day there's something neat coming out, and I'm envious of the resources that a lot of these young men and women get to use now. And I'm not saying that like back in our day, right? I'm just saying like this stuff's cool, right? Excited to do more of these podcasts.
Absolutely.
So hold fast, stay true. Thanks for letting us spend a little time with you.
See ya.